Jalen Suggs is expected to have a big impact for the Orlando Magic this season, but first, he's got to get on the court. The latest on his injury today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is September 24th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, Jalen Suggs speaks to our friends at the Sixth Man Show, talks about his status as he returns from his knee injury, why the news is vague and mysterious. I don't know. I just started watching Severance, so I don't know what the exact phrasing is, but we'll break down what Jalen Suggs says, why he matters, and what do the Magic do if he's not able to start the season. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Be one of our Orlando Magic dailies and listen 5 days a week. We're going Monday through Friday until the end of the season and a little bit beyond that too. Get in the habit now. That's what training camp is for, to build those habits. All part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Jalen Suggs has not played a game since January 25th. January 25th. It was a really glorious game. Magic finally had Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs in the lineup together after Jalen Suggs suffered the back injury in early January. And it finally felt like things were moving in the right direction. Remember, that game was against the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons were pretty good, but at the time, no one really knew who they were, and it felt like a big statement game. If the Magic were going to hold on to their spot in line in the Eastern Conference, they needed to put the Pistons back in their place. And in fact, with the Magic trailing, I think it was by 5 or 6 points entering the fourth quarter, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs stayed in the game. They were going to play through the fourth quarter to ensure the Magic won. To me, I remember watching that game and taking note of that moment and saying, oh, no, they're serious. They are making a statement. They are not losing this basketball game. They're not going to lose this game to the Pistons. And in fact, they didn't. The Magic went on like an 18-7 run or 18-4 run, something like that. They took a double-digit lead, and it all looked like the Magic were going to be back in good graces and good shape after struggling through much of January with the injuries and all that. Except Jalen Suggs bumped knees with another player, walked slowly off the court, and was going to miss another month, essentially. Almost another month, essentially. Magic had to scuttle around, figure things out, and you could just kind of feel the air rush out of the balloon. In all, of course, the Magic played only 6 games with their main trio of Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs. They played only 96 total minutes last season. Not barely enough to draw any conclusions, but Magic were pretty good. They were 4-1 or 5-1. No, 4-2. 4-2 in those 6 games. So who knows? And those 2 losses were a back-to-back against Memphis in the third game of the season, as well as a game that Paolo got injured. So there you go. Jalen Suggs' season was not over that night, though. As he was ramping up and getting ready to play, literally in the last stages, as Jalen Suggs told our friends again at the Sixth Man Show, go listen to their show after you're done listening to us. As he was in the last stages of getting back into rhythm, back into shape, playing 2-on-2 and 3-on-3 with the coaches, felt a pop, heard a crack, I think is how he described it on the show. And that started this journey that he's on now. Jalen Suggs was ruled out for the rest of the season about a week after that February injury, after that February incident. He went in for surgery to clean up some loose cartilage in his trochlea. And if you don't remember what the trochlea is, it's the cavity that your kind of knee, that the knee joint sits in. So, you got your, I think it's your fibula, your tibia, your patella, your fibula. They all meet at this point in the cavity is called the trochlea. There's some anatomy for you. The surgery that Jalen Suggs had is not a common one for basketball players. Initially, it was kind of described as, oh, they're just going in and cleaning some stuff up. A lot of us assumed it was a scope, which arthroscopic surgery is pretty routine and normal. This was something different. He had what was called a mosaic plasty. It's essentially they shave down the bone, they take the cartilage and they kind of weave it together so that it can strengthen and harden and not cause any long-term issues. At the end of the day, what the Magic were trying to do here is ensure that Jalen Suggs, who has a history of injuries, who has struggled with injuries throughout his career, playing 50 games only twice in 4 years, playing more than 60 games only once in 4 years, they wanted to make sure this is it, that this issue is not going to pop up again. And they sacrificed some short-term to get this long-term security. Again, after all, Magic invested a long-term contract in Jalen Suggs. This injury, the surgery, it wasn't like an ACL tear. It's not like something was torn, had to be repaired and fixed or inserted in, but it was more reconstructive than I think the Magic let on, and more serious than I think how everyone spoke about it. Now, let's make this one thing clear. Jalen Suggs is on the court. Jalen Suggs is doing things on the court. In fact, just Tuesday, the Orlando Magic posted photos taken at the Advent Health Training Center, assumedly on Tuesday, maybe Monday, maybe a week ago, maybe a few weeks ago. But Jalen Suggs has been a regular in the Advent Health Training Center, especially now that most players are in market. Photos there include Noah Penda, Jase Richardson, Anthony Black, Wendell Carter, Tyus Jones. I don't think Franz is here yet. I don't think Paolo's back yet. But a lot of the players are in market. A lot of the players are working out with each other. I think Desmond Bane's already here. A lot of the Magic, Jet Howard's already here. A lot of the Magic players are already in Orlando. Jalen Suggs was included in those photos. No brace on his knee, no padding, no wrapping, bare knee, doing basketball things. So he is healthy. He is still recovering. He's still in rehab. He's still making sure he's checking all the boxes and crossing his T's, dotting his I's and all that. He is on the court doing things. It's not like there's some major setback, or as far as we know, some major setback. Maybe the Magic are bringing things along slowly. Maybe he's on schedule. Maybe he's behind. But he is on the court doing things. The things we don't know are, is he doing contact? That's a big step. We don't know if he's doing contact, if he's playing 5-on-5. We don't know the extent of his workouts and what he's able to do. That's going to be one of the key questions that we ask at Media Day on Monday. So our friends at the Sixth Man Show, again, after you're done listening to us, we'll pause this and go listen to them and then come back and listen to me. Just make sure you listen to me, download, rate, subscribe, all that jazz. Rate, subscribe them too. They're awesome. We love our friends at the Sixth Man Show. The Sixth Man Show had Jalen Suggs on their pod on Monday. They're doing their preseason pods there. The fan show. They do a great job. Jalen Suggs was asked how the rehab process was going. He said, look, this has been a difficult offseason. Rehab is tough. Even for routine stuff, rehab is tough. You got to kind of be off your feet for a little bit. You got to regain confidence in your body. It's a lot. And I think we always overlook this aspect of it. So it's as much mental as it is physical. Again, Mo Wagner, I think, said this earlier in the summer too. He's been cleared. Like, he is cleared to do everything. It's just about the confidence he has in his body to ramp up and do all the things he has to do on an NBA floor. Jalen Suggs is going through the same thing. In fact, Paolo Banchero was one of the guys encouraging Jalen Suggs and, keeping perspective after he went through his injury with the oblique. And that period of inactivity that inevitably comes from an injury. But Jalen Suggs did not commit to being ready for training camp next week. The pertinent quote, the knee is coming along, but really just getting to work on minute muscles and detailed parts of my body that have been overlooked. It's been great. Camp and return will come in his time. Him, of course, referring to religion stuff. But the process is really good. I love the spot that we're in right now. I would tell you, and I would argue, this is not necessarily a reason to panic. This isn't to say that Jalen's in a bad spot. He seems to be in a very good spot. The guy's always optimistic as all out. But Magic fans need to be prepared and need to be okay with the fact that the Magic may not clear him for training camp. He may miss a couple of preseason games. I know there's only 4. He may be eyeing a return closer to the start of the season. And again, it's all looking at this big picture, this long-term view that they'd rather have Suggs healthy and raring to go at 100% in May, in April, in March than today. Today, you put the groundwork in. Today, you make sure everything's okay before you move forward, and then you have a season in front of you. To be sure, this is a good investment because the Magic need Jalen Suggs. Why Jalen Suggs is so important and why patience is okay, we'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you like FanDuel for player props to build a same-game parlay or even jumping in as the live action unfolds, FanDuel has something for you. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. As we look ahead to Sunday's games, we can take a look at the Lions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in a marquee game against the Philadelphia Eagles. 3.5-point underdogs against the defending Super Bowl champions. Should be a fun game as Tampa Bay Buccaneers look to go 4-0 to start the season. If you like to be a little spicier and try some of the more exotic elements, the Jacksonville Jaguars are only 3.5-point road dogs to the San Francisco 49ers as we're recording this. And the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football, somehow 2.5-point favorites. So your Florida teams very, 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 very involved. If you want to get on NBA futures, they have that as well, including looking at the awards. I believe Jamal Mosley is still the betting favorite to win Coach of the Year. I'm checking that out right now. Jamal Mosley still favored to win Coach of the Year at plus 600. Quinn Snyder of the Atlanta Hawks right behind him at plus 650. You can find that all on FanDuel. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. It goes without saying how important Jalen Suggs is. It really does. As Jamal Mosley says, he is the head of the snake on defense. He is a player who, just by sheer force of will, lifts everybody's energy up. It was something we talked with him about at the end of the season, asking him, in light of the injury, in light of just how much he struggled to stay healthy, does he consider changing how he plays? He actually addressed this a little bit in Monday's episode of the Sixth Man Show as well. And Jalen Suggs is unapologetic about the way he plays. He is all out all the time. We all joke that he is held together by duct tape and super glue because he always feels like he's about to fall apart, and he always seems to push through those physical barriers. In fact, it almost feels like sometimes you got to stop him from hurting himself sometimes. But that identity, that attitude sets the tone for the entire team. He does elevate the team's defense. The Orlando Magic last year had a 109.1 defensive rating. Again, second best defense in the league. With Jalen Suggs on the floor for his 35 games, 1,002 minutes last year, the Magic had a 104.8 defensive rating. Now, we mentioned this yesterday when we were talking about Jonathan Isaac. Usually Jonathan Isaac is the one that puts up the otherworldly defensive ratings. When he's on the floor, he just changes everything on defense. Jalen Suggs was that guy last year. And while I don't think any of us necessarily see a defensive player of the year, this is a perennial all-defensive team guy. And look, the Magic were fine defensively after his injury. If you go after his injury his injury occurred on January 25th. The Magic were 109.1 before the injury overall, only 110.6 after. And again, like Gary Harris had a 105.9 defensive rating, Jonathan Isaac 106.6, Franz Wagner 106.9. The Magic still had some killer defensive lineups. This is a good defensive team. Even though they don't have that like purely dominant defensive player, this team has willing defenders, a great defensive scheme, a clear sense of their identity. Adding Jalen Suggs to the mix only elevates them further. And that's really what Jalen Suggs would do for this team. It's why he's so important, because he is someone that keeps the energy up. He never wavers on his energy. And you have no choice but to try to match him, because you're going to look silly if you don't try with the same kind of intensity and effort that he does. He's a teammate that everybody loves, but he sets the tone for the entire team. You don't slip when Jalen Suggs is there, because Jalen Suggs is going to pick you up too and make your job easier by working so much harder on the defensive end. Jalen Suggs has an impact beyond that, though, and that comes with his potential for three-point shooting. I've mentioned these numbers before, but Jalen Suggs is a huge impactor, big impactor for this team. He is someone who can potentially be the kind of three-point shooter Orlando is needed. Now, obviously, the Magic got Desmond Bane, but you need multiple three-point shooters. And if Jalen Suggs' stats match what he was able to do, especially early in the season, and what he did in 2024, the chances of him having a major impact for this team go way, way up. Now, again, like so many things for the Magic, you got to look a little deeper than the numbers. He shot only 31.4% from three last year. But only those first 5 games with Paolo Banchero. If you only take those first 5 games with Paolo Banchero, he shot 42.5% from three, 17 for 40 on spot-up threes. Let me see if I can find this here. Sorry, I'm pulling up the stats as we're doing this. 7 of his shots were assisted by Paolo Banchero. He took, again, those first 5 games, 27 shots, 17 threes, 7 of them assisted by Paolo Banchero. Jalen Suggs is going to benefit more than anybody else from having Paolo back in the lineup. And honestly, Jalen Suggs is going to benefit more than anybody else from being in a lineup with more shooting, where he has less on-ball responsibility. As he mentioned on the Six-Man Show, those opportunities that he had last year to be on the ball, to understand the responsibility that Paolo and Franz have, to make those mistakes, to have those shot decisions, was illuminating for him. And look, there's still going to be games where he does that. I've been stressing this three-point shooting and turning him into a spot-up shooter. There's still going to be moments for him to take over like that. That part won't go completely away. He still will have that in his game. But Suggs matters because you're going to have Desmond Bane on one side of the floor and Jalen Suggs on the other. And if Jalen Suggs shoots as well as he did last season, again, in this small sample, that has the chance to be really, really important. I want to make sure I put this correctly. According to data from Second Spectrum last year, so we're going to look at second Spectrum data. In those 5 games that Suggs played with Banchero, in the first 5 games there, again, 17 for 40 from 3 overall. On catch and shoot three-pointers, according to data from Second Spectrum, Jalen Suggs was 17 for 32. He shot 53.1% on catch and shoot three-pointers in the first 5 games of the season. Now, small sample. I hear you. Ridiculously small sample. But if you look back at 2024, again, same data, according to Second Spectrum, same data. If you look back at 2024, Suggs shot 40.7% from 3. That to me is a positive trend. That to me says you put Suggs in a role where he's taking almost exclusively catch and shoot shots. He's not taking a ton of pull-up threes. He's not making all those dribble decisions. He's not settling for threes, but getting open threes. That tells me he can be a real impactor on that end. I'm a believer. I'm bullish on it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, the Magic are wrong. And you got some problems you got to solve. But Orlando wants to see Jalen Suggs take 6-7 threes a game. They want him to be that role. Between Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs, they should both average about 7 threes per game. If the Magic take 30, let's say the Magic are aiming for 34 threes. 14 of those 34 threes are going to come from Suggs and Bane. Probably going to get 4 or 5 each. So let's say 9 total from Paolo and Franz. So that's 14 plus 9. That's 23 of your 33. AB is going to get 1. Tyus Jones is going to probably take 2 or 3. You see how quickly you can get to a very comfortable number. And if Suggs and Bane are shooting comfortably around 40% on those 14 threes, the Magic are a significantly better three-point shooting team. And so Suggs, with his defense, with his shooting, that's what changes the Magic. We're looking for ways to change and adapt this team. That's what changes the Magic. That's what makes them a significantly better team. And that's what's in front of Orlando this year. That's what Orlando has to solve for, and that's what Orlando has to deliver. And that's why Suggs is so important. But we all got to live with the possibility that Jalen Suggs won't be available to start the season. It is not impossible a month away from the beginning of the season. So what are the Magic's options? Where do they go? We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. The biggest issue with Jalen Suggs potentially missing some time is that a lot of what Orlando's trying to do is banked on the idea of Jalen Suggs playing point guard. Orlando wants size. He's 6'5", big dude, built like a quarterback, built like a big dude, can take and dish out hits. They want someone like him. And they're looking to kind of do this point guard by committee thing. So it's not necessarily important who's in that role, but you look at the Magic's other guard options, and there just isn't anyone quite like Jalen Suggs. Sure, you could go with Anthony Black, and Anthony Black would be a fine starter. I wouldn't mind him necessarily starting in that spot. He's big. He's got the size. You're not going to have any let up defensively. There's no copying Jalen Suggs' energy, but you're not going to have any let up defensively. And AB will hit threes. I am much more confident in Anthony Black's development as a three-point shooter. Like, is he going to be 37, 38%? Probably not. Can he get from, where was it, 31% last year to can he get to 33, 34% comfortably? I'm pretty confident in that. Jalen Suggs is obviously a better option. I think Suggs is a more efficient three-point shooter. Again, Suggs shot 31% from 3 last year total too. So it's not like it's a huge difference, but he's a lot more consistent, I think, and there's more signs from him than there are AB. So AB is certainly a quality option. He's going to have to prove that he can hit threes. But if the Magic need three-point shooting or they want the stability of a point guard, which worked really well with Corey Joseph last year, they go with Tyus Jones. Now, obviously, they signed Tyus Jones, and we may have wondered, okay, you drafted a point guard, Jase Richardson, you signed Tyus Jones. I've seen a few Magic fans suggest that, that was a sign that they weren't confident Jalen Suggs was going to be ready for camp. But look, Tyus Jones is a better version of what the Magic had in Corey Joseph last year. All love to Corey Joseph. He brings stability. He's a natural point guard, doesn't need the ball in his hands, is an excellent three-point shooter. He shot 41% from 3 in each of the last 2 seasons. But Tyus Jones, while I think he competes hard on defense, is a negative defender. I think the ultimate question with Tyus Jones, as we look ahead to the season, is not about how he's going to hold up in the regular season. He'll be fine. It's whether he can play in the playoffs for this team and the way this team wants to play. It's whether the Magic will need to limit his minutes or pick his spots to impact because he'll get picked on defense. That's what happened in 2024. They couldn't play Joe Ingles because teams just picked on Joe. The Cavs just picked on Joe Ingles every time he was in the game. And so the Magic, one of the reasons the Magic struggled a bit in that series is their bench didn't give them the same lift because Mo Wagner really struggled in that series. And Joe Ingles really struggled in that series. And those were your 2 big, and then Cole Anthony struggled. Those are your big offensive engines off the bench. And now all of a sudden you're leaning a lot more on your starters. And look, they delivered in 3 of the games. They delivered for a half of game 7. That's that. And so there's just a big long-term question out. That doesn't matter to be in the season because everyone's kind of figuring things out. No one's targeting players the way that they do in the playoffs. So if Tyus Jones is your opening night starter, are the Magic going to get off to the same like super hot start we want them to get off to? Probably not. Again, no offense to Tyus Jones. Magic are probably a worse team. Still a very good team, but a worse team. Other guys will have to step up their defense to cover for what they might be losing in that downgrade from Tyus Jones, but Tyus Jones can hold its own. And then, you have the rookie, Jase Richardson. And look, Jase, I think we saw in Summer League that Jase is going to compete. I have no doubt if he has to play minutes, he is going to make the most of those minutes. He is feisty. He's unafraid of being physical. He's unafraid of going downhill on people and getting to the rim. He's an efficient finisher at the rim. If Jase has to play, he's going to have his moments. I am super confident that when Jase Richardson's number is called, he's going to step up. Now, that number is going to be called in emergencies. I don't think he's going to be part of the rotation again, barring this kind of an injury. And you certainly don't want Jase Richardson and Tyus Jones playing together. That makes me think that Tyus Jones would get the starting nod over Anthony Black should Jalen Suggs have to miss time. Tyus is just kind of a plug-and-play guy. He's been a starter in this league before. He's a veteran. He can stabilize a team as a point guard. You can really see whether a point guard would mean something. He's going to stay out of the way and shoot threes. He's already got a relationship with Desmond Bane. He's frankly already got a relationship with Jalen Suggs from their days growing up in Minnesota. The Magic have options. Now, again, the best version of this Magic team is still Jalen Suggs at guard. And whether you agree or disagree with the point guard experiment and what the Magic are planning to do at point guard this year, that's the plan. That's the group. That's how you maximize this group. Whether that experiment works or not, we're going to evaluate that after the season ends. The Magic are doing it. Like there's no getting around it. The Magic are doing it. But this is how this roster is built. They have a cushion. They have a way to absorb this loss. And look, they should know. They should be prepared for it because Jalen Suggs has a long history of missing time. Again, 35 games last year, 36 games last year. That's abnormal. But he struggles to get to 50. He misses time throughout the course of the season, and the Magic do have options to turn to when that happens. Not if, when that happens. But make no mistake about it, Suggs is super important. And with so many new players on the team, and it's not so many, but with a new starter on this team and the expectations this team is facing, not having Suggs at the start of the season. And again, it's very clear he is clear to participate in drills. He is doing stuff on the court. He may start camp off not doing contact and just sitting out those scrimmages just to preserve his body and just make sure he's all good. And then join the team like 2-3 weeks later, 2 weeks into camp. Like, I don't think he's going to play in the Puerto Rico game against the Heat. Certainly, I think he'll play in the games in Orlando. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if he's on track to play in those games and be ready for the regular season because that's ultimately the goal. Training camp's training camp. He's a veteran, knows what he's doing. He's been working hard all summer. Not worried about Jalen Suggs. That guy isn't going to be in shape. He's going to be ready to go. He's just going to have to knock off some playing rust. But the Magic need Jalen Suggs. They need him to be successful. And they need him to meet their expectations. And that's what we're going to be waiting for because as we get closer to camp now, 6 days away, as we get closer to camp, that's going to be one of the big questions we have to get answered. Where Suggs is at and whether he is ready to play the role the Magic envisioned for him. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the film I see download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando, you can also check us out on YouTube to search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to us, go check out the Locked On NBA Top 100. It is here, voted on by the NBA hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. You can check out my reaction. It was 2 weeks ago. We talked with Kuka Heel of Locked On Pistons. We talked Paolo versus Cade. We also talked about where the Magic are on the Locked On Top 100 list on Wednesday, 2 weeks ago. Wednesday, you can check that out. I'm going to go ahead and preview this now as well. There's Jalen Suggs. If you're watching, oh no, that's not Jalen. That's not the one. That's Desmond Bain. We're gonna find him. We're gonna find him. Here's Jalen Suggs in the top 100 at number 67. ESPN's coming out with their list. I'm sure the Ringer will have theirs. We'll probably do an episode. We got one more at Locked On NBA Top 100 episode in us. We'll do an episode comparing the lists and what it says about the Magic. Kind of re-look at how the league perceives the Magic, how the National perceives the Magic. We'll get to that probably. We might do that tomorrow. We'll either do that. We'll probably do that tomorrow. We'll see how far ESPN is. I'm waiting for ESPN to reveal the whole list. We'll do that once ESPN reveals the whole list. I want to talk about how the offense gets better, and we're going to have a fun guest as well later this week. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.